switched, it went up to about 70%. And that happened, like you can see it almost instantly, like something's going on in the market. And just one piece of information. And you can take that piece of information and attach it to other pieces of information. So this kind of stuff is not on the news. It's not being produced by the government. It's bang up to date because it's reflecting right now, today, this minute. We can say this market sucks because only 1/3 of anything that's listed is actually selling. What a great piece of information to show a seller who's being a bit resistant to pricing.
And look how many have had a price decrease.
Well, 107 price.
But even 164 canceled is like mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
In a week.
Yeah.
And we
We only need one every week canceling.
Right, we don't know that information, but you know, you can look at it and go, well, that's a statistic that looks like it sucks. You know, I can't remember exactly, but I do know that in 2021, these numbers, the pendings versus the new listings, were pretty much identical. 100 list, 100 sell. Clearly a very hot seller's market. This is very clearly a hot buyer's market. Even though it may not be reflective yet, if you're sitting in front of a seller and you say, look, new listings 321, pendings 82.
And you can quickly customize that to be better or whatever.
Oh,
You have to create just with the click of a button, and you'd have more honed in.
Yeah, you really can.
And you can do like neighborhoods, but it just depending on how many, you know, what kind of numbers, yeah,
They don't look as
if it's that reflective.
So pictures.
Like clearly,
What are you definitely looking
I
at?
do flip through the hot list, like I do flip through this quite a lot, but I've never really taken the time to compare those two, like.
Yeah, and it switches, right? And you can almost see it happening. I mean, it's, you know, it's a snapshot of today. The sample only might be different. You know, it tends to get a little bit different on like a Wednesday, Thursday, because a lot of people try and list on a Wednesday and Thursday for the weekend, which they did, but it matters so much today. So it can shift around a bit, but essentially just mentally grab the picture. And then you go to the info spots thing, or actually, sorry, that one. So this is a median sales price. I mean, it's, you know, you can average. This is just the whole, so I'm sure you've all seen this, right? It's the whole of Southern Ontario minus the central GTA kind of piece.
You can customize it.
Yes, you customize it whatever you want. But the key thing is there's a whack of data here, which is good. So what we're looking at is the trend. We're not necessarily looking at the specific. So what I'm going to demonstrate to a client, I'm going to say, okay, so you all remember February 2022, right? And the seller says, yeah, absolutely. Okay. So if we had listed the average house in February 22, it probably would have sold for about $875,000. Now, if your home back then was worth $875,000, and then if we look at, was this December or January? It's probably December 2022. All right, so we're going to go to December 2022. The 875 became 640. This is based on sold data. It's not based upon a whim, a wish, or anything that's negative. This is actual factual information.
No, these are the median numbers.
Yeah, so
So
you
we're
can do
better using.
You can do that. You can do that if you want.
You go to my website, walkerteam.ca, and you go under market stats. Just because it's only just a small person list.
Yeah.
I can't see if I'm typing right or
Yeah,
what.
you need to get
Tree.
our.
Get closer.
Next week, we're discussing spelling.
No, I just can't see it.
I just.
I do.
IMD.
Am I right there?
You're good.
Okay.
And then go to-
Yes.
there's a tab under market stats. So this stuff you're showing from ITSO
Yeah.
is all,
You can do that.
is all embedded on, but
You can embed it?
yeah, if you click that, just scroll down a little bit. But I broke it into the city, so it's very informational. Just send people to your site or whatever, but everything Ian is saying is just information we have at the tips of our fingers.
So the challenge with this a little bit is that the reason I'm referring to the whole of Southern Ontario is because it's so much data, right? It's a smooth line, it's a trend. So this can demonstrate, okay, so we're in Barry and this is what it is. So Oromadonte would have a higher price point, that's probably more representative of the trend. But if you get a bit wonky, depending on if, in Oro especially, you have a waterfront, $4 million waterfront sells and the numbers get skewed. So you go back to the median, well, so we can do this on average or whatever, but what I'm going to say is, okay, so let's take 678 divided by 875 and we get 30%, something like that. So we can say that on average, Mr. Seller, and your house is an average, but this is an average representation of everything else that's out there. If your home had sold for 875,000, and if you're sitting in a $2 million home, you can say that, I know yours is not 875, but if supposing it was roughly $2 million, that's roughly what you think it is, and this is an average drop in the entire market, 678, is about 30%. So, Mr. Seller, your $2 million home, if it were based on the average trend, according to factual sold data, is somewhere around about 1.4. And we're going to establish exactly what that number is, because we're going to look at a whole whack of other information and details, and we're going to look at your home, which is an average, and we're going to make some adjustments and factors and bits and pieces. But as a general overview, 1.4, if we were to sub in December 2022. The question is, what happens in Feb? So from here to here, the market went up about 15%, something like that. So now we've got 30, 15, whatever the number is, 10. So we're down about 20%. So in actual fact, it's not 1.4 today. It would be more like that $2 million house would be more like 6. So you gained 200 grand. But you can see we're actually starting to taper off again. So this tapering off compared to the matrix number where we've got 84 pendings or whatever it was versus 300 listings, you can tell the competition's heating up. What happens when the competition heats up and there's more competition? Price goes down, or it doesn't sell, or it stays on the market longer. Whatever it is, it becomes more difficult to sell. So when we add that to this, you start to build a picture. And then what I would do is I would live pull out some other information on that info stats chart. So you can put out those on market and everything else. And you can, so actually if you go back to that info sparks again up here. And if you were to go down here where it says homes for sale, and then just print or share or whatever, so we can see a proper graph. So this is the number of homes for sale. So it's not necessarily new listings, it's new listings minus sold. And as you can tell, this is a 3-year graph. We have more homes for sale now than we have had for 3 years at least, as an average. And it doesn't necessarily relate to your house at 123 Amy Street in Oromadonte, but it relates to the whole of the area. More homes for sale, there's the proof. It's not a made up number, I'm not guessing. This is what you're competing with. And yes, I realize that your $2 million home might not be representative of the average, which is like 650,000 or something. We could, if we wanted to, try and narrow this down, but the problem is as soon as you start to narrow, especially if you're just looking at Simcoe County, you're going to have such few data points that it's going to be meaningless. This just gives you a go. So I start to put together this random, well not random, but this set of criteria, but it's not on the news, it's not published anywhere, it's up to date now. The stats that we get from the government on all sorts of other bits and pieces, which we can use to predict potentially the future, those stats are late. They're outdated. The CPI number, the inflation index, is wrong. It's wrong from several different counts. Number one is they exclude things that they should include. So it's fixed, it's rigged. The other thing as well, like I think the CPI just coming out, like 4%, I think it was. Right, so last month it was 3.2, and everyone's jumping up there going, yeah, inflation's dead, we've beaten the beast. No, they didn't look a year ago. So inflation is basically built up of 3 key things. There is transportation costs, oil and gas, housing. So housing is circular. So the more the house prices go up, or the more the interest rates go up, the more it forces CPI up, but not down, which becomes self-defeating. So if you can understand some of this and explain it to somebody in a layman's terms, you can use that to say, look, inflation, I could have told you a month ago that inflation was going to go up this month. And the reason I could is because the price of oil and gas naturally coming out of the ground today is more than it was a year ago. So a year ago, the stats had oil and gas in them priced at about $80 a barrel, and today it's like $86 a barrel. So about 25 to 30% of the CPI index, which is made up of oil and gas and transportation costs, had to go up this month. No question, had to go up. It's a mathematical equation. So because you know it's going to go up, you also know that interest rates are not going down. Because the government is basing on historical data, it's basing it on information that it's not necessarily looking at what's, they might be looking at what's coming, but they're not saying that they know what's coming. But it had to go up this month. So there's no question that interest rates are going to stay high for the foreseeable future. Because that inflation number is probably going to stay high for the next month or two. And then it's not come on.
But this picture is not open to interpretation. Everything you hear on the news is open to interpretation. This is not
This is
arguable.
it, this is a fact. Yeah.
He'll point to tell you it's February. He'll tell you the high point, right? Like,
Yeah.
I love pictures.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, so I use pictures wherever I can because I can put it in front of something. Go, there you go. What
They
what-
may not like it,
That's right, but it's not a
but it
question.
is, you can't question it.
And it's an interactive picture too,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, it
Like
is.
being able to like do this with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, you can play with this and do what you like with it. But as soon as you have this conversation, I tend to do this at the beginning because what I have of any kind of presentation. So if I'm doing a listing presentation, I'm talking to, sell or whatever it is. This comes up as the macro picture. We can't change the market. We can change your house. We can't move it, but we can make it look good or better. But we can't change this. But this is the backdrop. So it's like if your home is better than the house next door, we can make your home look good and sell better than the house next door. But if the whole market went down by 20%, your house went down by 20%, it would still outsell next door. But it went down by 20%. Before we go any further, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, do you have any questions about this? Do you understand this? Is there anything more I can explain for you? And I know I have a background in like stock markets and portfolio and stuff like that, so I understand the CPI and GDP and all those kind of numbers and bits and pieces. I can explain to them what's probably coming up, but as they said, this is factual. It's exactly right. Now, do you have any questions about this, Mr. and Mr. before we get to the house?
It's quick.
It's quick.
Yeah.
15 minutes in, I'm done. Because if they say, oh God, like we thought our house was worth $2 million, and I just proved to them in the first 10 to 15 minutes that it's not, unless they've done something to that house, then we're really not having a conversation about listing the house anymore. What we're having a conversation about now is why did you want to move? What's the motive? Do you have to move? Are you just kind of testing? Is the mortgage too high? Can you afford the mortgage? How much of a mortgage have you got? Well, we've got $1.6 million. Oops. Do I want to take the listing now because you can't pay me? So, you're having lots of other conversations inside your head based upon what they're telling you, and you can back out of that situation real fast if you need to. There's no point in listing a house if they can't pay you. Or if that situation comes up and they say to you, actually, our mortgage is 1.6 million. That's the kind of, okay, let's push the laptop to one side for a second, get out the pen and the paper. All right, people, we're in the pickle. What are we going to do? How are we going to get you out of this situation? I can still do the valuation, but we know we're tight. We're probably not walking away with this without the bank on our side. Have you spoken to the bank? You're having a completely different conversation about your point. That, I think that right there, scary, right?
No, I sneezed.
Yes.
Um, this is it, right here. I mean, that to me would be, how do I get the seller to see reality? That's it. We're done. Taken out.
I mean, you still find some that will choose to ignore it
Yeah, they will.
because they think that their house is different. And I had a scenario a couple of months ago, retired couple, both in their 70s. She apparently hasn't got much longer on the earth, unfortunately. Something had happened. I think it was probably down to medical expenses. They lived in a bungalow in Masaga, and on paper, it should have been around the high 700s because it was a nice bungalow, it was finished basement and everything. Going into it, it was like, oh my gosh, there's pink carpet, there were literally like the pea green walls, there was stuff everywhere. He'd cut a hole in the countertop and sunk in at what he thought was a nice piece of granite, but it literally, he just cut a hole in the countertop and sat it in there.
I think we chatted after you had just been there.
It was a mess, an absolute mess. And I had said, like, you know, bearing in mind, I know that, you know, you need to be sold. I can't see this being, you know, much over 700 based on what you have here. He said, oh, but I've got, you know, like 9 foot ceilings downstairs. And so I know, however, you know, there's everything else that needs to be taken into account. He said, and the whole, and then he said, but my mortgages add up to 700. He'd been in the house for years and years and years, but he had second and thirds on it to help him through other situations, and yet he needed 700 to get out.
Is that on Mapleview?
No, it's in Masago.
Oh, okay.
So I had said, okay, give me a sec, you know, let me go back, let me think, and see if there's anything I can think that I can make this work. At the moment, I'm not seeing that I can. So I went back and I was having a chat with him. I said, I can't take it. I can't honestly think that it would be worth his time or mine listing at, you know, closer to the 800 mark. So I phoned him and he said, oh, I really want you to have it. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I said, I think you'd have to be listed 7.25 tops and see if anyone really wants it. In the end, he found somebody else. They did list at 780. It sat there for nigh on 90 days and expired. He went through another agent. They listed it, I think, at 750, sat there. It's still unsold. So I don't know what his situation is now, because he was getting that the third was calling their loan. I know he didn't have the money. So I don't know, but it was a case of I'm explaining everything to him. You could show him the charts, you can show him the comps. Some people still don't get it, but just don't take the listing because you want something to have a sign on.
Yeah. My challenge that I found with that was other realtors coming in and giving them inflated prices, because there was a listing that I went into and said, I think you're about 750. And she said, well, she's like, every other realtor came in here and told me that I was 950. And then I'm sitting there going, did I screw it up that bad? And then like, no, I don't think I did. And she was just like, well, I like you. I'll give it to you. I want to list at 950. But I knew they weren't moving for less. At this point in our motivation conversation, I realized they weren't going to move for anything less than 9. Like, they couldn't financially make it make sense. And so I said, like, no, I'm sorry. Like, I can't.
Yeah, if you're not seeing it, if the
And it
numbers
was
don't
like a
make sense.
realtor came in and listed her at 950, and it sat and sat and sat and sat and sat and sat and sat. And now it's just.
There's another saying, sometimes you're better if you get it the second or third time.
Yeah. And you know what? But she made me feel, when I was there and I said 750, she was like, you're nuts. And I'm like, well, the numbers, and I have this attached to my listing presentation of the exact area. And I had like showed her, I'm like, the numbers are not, like, you're a 2-bedroom house. Like, Yes, we have a nice
I've
property.
got another little response you can give to something like that as well.
Yes.
So she's saying 950.
Yeah.
You say, okay, so today you think it's 950. You agree, right? And she's going, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so today on our previous chart, we're down here, right? So what do you think your house would have been worth at the height of the market?
Oh, that's a good one, actually.
Let's go backwards and go back to February 22. What do you think it would have sold for then?
That's
And
really good.
because you're going to add on 20 to 25%, right? So you take 950, you add on 20%, which is another, what, $200,000 at least. And you get her to tell you the number. So don't give her the number. You say, what do you think it would have sold at the height of the real estate market? And she might come up with like $1 million. And then you say, well, $1 million minus 25% is 750. And they kind of almost solve their own question
Yeah.
by going through the number. But then if she goes, right, I don't know, it would have been like over $1 million. You go, okay, how does 1.2 million sound? She goes, oh, no, it couldn't be that much. I said, okay, well, I agree with you. It couldn't have been that much. But 1.2 million is what you're telling me it was worth, because you're saying it's worth 950 today. And, you know, it's surprising how they don't connect the reality. And that's what we're trying to do is help them see where they are in a kind way. Sort of thing.
I have something similar.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
When I meet with people on a home evaluation, I usually start by trying to just ask them what they think their house is worth. Because I have everything written down, I can't change it. Well, I have no idea, I have no idea, I have no idea. It's always the same response. And I would say, well, I'll give you what you paid for it. Oh, no, it's worth more than that.
There you go.
Only if I bought it a long time ago.
We got to start.
Yeah.
The other one that it is, my friend told me that my house should sell for 750. And my comment to that, now they know my personality and I'm friendly and they didn't know that they knew I wasn't trying to be an ass. I'm like, oh, perfect. So let's get connected and I'll write them up an offer.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, they're not going to buy it. And I'm like, oh, and then you go, okay. So it's because in this situation, I was like contending with real estate agents that were coming in there and telling her 950, and the person who ended up listing it was like a fairly reputable agent. And in my head, I'm going like, you told this woman that her 2-bedroom, no basement house was worth 950,000. So I feel like almost my biggest challenge, a lot of our challenges are going up against realtors who are just wanting to get the listing opposed to actually, because she looked at me when I said 750 like I was crazy. And I wasn't. I'm pretty sure I was right.
Well, and you know, you're right to back out of the loophole.
Yeah.
You save money.
Yeah. Well, that was my thought. If she wasn't going to list, and if she was open to discussing it further, that would have been like a price reduction further. That would have been a different conversation. But she was absolutely, no, I can't afford to buy this and buy the house that I want if I don't get 900,000. And I'm like,
Yeah, like you say, it's your expenses that are carrying it and
So,
wasting your time.
remember, we're in a shift, right? So stay alive for 25 is the buzzword that's kind of going around. You know, so staying alive means not spending money unless you have to. So, you know, it's a business decision. I get to decide whether or not I want to take your listing. Yes, you get to decide if you want to give it to me. And I wouldn't say this directly to them, but it's definitely in my head of like, you know, I have a business to run and I'm not just going to take it to make you feel good. That's not what this is about, right? Unless I can sell you a home for a reasonable price that we all agree on, given the market fundamentals and everything that's looking at us, I'm not going to take the listing. I don't want to blow smoke at you. I'm not going to tell you can do something. There's a listing right now at the end of Mapleview Drive that we pitched on. And we had the listings, and the husband said, at the end of the day, well, if we're going to sell this house, because he didn't want to get divorced, and she did. And what if we're going to sell this house? But Barry's not even going to do it. Okay. And we told them 875 to 900, and we proved it. And she was on board. And the lady said, wow, we want it at 950. Well, Barry's is listed at 950. Still listed. I don't care. If they get it and they sell it, good luck to them. If they get it and they don't sell it, when the listing is buyer, she's already said, well, we'll give the Paris team a shot for like 2 months or 3 months, whatever it is. And if it doesn't sell in the spring, we're listing it with Ian and Keith.
Like what Dave said on being, sometimes it's better to be the
Yes.
marketer than the listener there.
We have a listing on Muffet right now, which out of 3 agents, we gave them the lowest price. We got the listing.
Does it sold?
No. Actually, no, it did sell.
Okay.
But then it was SPP and SPP coming on. And they screwed up on the end there. So, of course, now the market has done that on the last dip. So we had it sold at 930, it's now listed at 919, unfortunately. So
The fact is, it's getting harder to sell houses. You don't need overpriced ones.
you don't, you absolutely don't. And I
You
got.
can't carry, I mean, it's very, you've got a few of them. You can't carry it,
It's
yeah.
just- And you back to what you said with kids or whatever your big wife is, your family's important to you. You go in there showing houses at a normal price. You just rob your family of a lot of valuable time.
It's key. Do you want to flip back to the actual presentation?
Oh, yeah.
Another point on the pictures that being shown is, what I love about, you bring them into agreement all the way along your process. Like, do you agree if everywhere is high? Yeah, like there's always a whole bunch of yeses. You're on the same page as you move forward with your presentation. All my evaluations start with these pictures, just like you said.
You've got the big picture and you bring them into their house.
And their house is a lot easier once you go through these steps. The last thing you really want to talk about is price all the time. Like argue with them over what their house is, like because the neighbors is better or pink or blue or whatever.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. Get them to yes. Let's skip to. Buyer's mindsets. Because the other side of the coin is the buyer, right? So we're kind of focusing on the seller, but there is a buyer side of this. So buyer's mindsets, I have choices. I can come up with a buyer, negotiating power. I can't buy now because the rate's too high. I can't get down, blah, blah, blah. I can something you can buy. I can offer whatever I want and ask for whatever I want, maybe. I must buy quickly before rates go up any higher. Yeah, possibly as well. I think that argument is disappearing. But the buyer, for the first time in 4 or 5 years, and possibly even arguably 2018, was definitely a buyer's market for a blip. But it didn't last too long. And 2017 was more just an overinflated bubble retraction rather than an economic one. Although rates were just starting to ease up then, and it was COVID that brought them back down again. 2008, we saw about a 10% drop in house prices in this area, which was nothing to do with Canada. That was a US problem we called the cold. They sneaked, we called the cold kind of thing. This is the first time really in a long time that the buyers have probably had more control. I mean, just looked at the number of new listings versus the pendings. 30% take up in sales in 7 days, assuming that is a correct number and it rolls forward, is 100% the buyer's market. So the buyer thinks they're in control, and they are to some degree more than they have been. But I'm sure we've all been having those conversations about the buyer that says, it's not at the bottom yet. I want to buy at the bottom. Can I ask you to go back to that chart again? But not that one, the other one. This is medium size. Right. Okay. So if a buyer says to you, I want to buy at the bottom, my next response is, that's awesome. I want to buy at the bottom as well. How will you know when you're there?
When it starts going back up.
Oh, when it starts going back up. Okay. When do you know it's there? It didn't go back up yet. Right, until next month. But if it goes back up, have you not missed the bottom? So what criteria? Tell me the criteria, because when you know it's the bottom, I'm going to buy something. So tell me the criteria that you are going to use specifically to know that you're on the bottom.
I think I saw Gary Keller do that live illustration where he said, I'll run the pen. You just tell me when you want to buy. And he's already back up.
You don't know, right? I didn't see that, but you don't know, right? So if a buyer said to you today, I want to buy at the bottom, you say, that's awesome, but I've got a bit of bad news. I said, what's that? I said, you missed it already. Does that not look like the bottom? Are we on higher today than we were in February? So you've missed the bottom. Now we don't know if that's truly the bottom. It is. Ignoring this.
Yeah.
This is the bottom as it was in February. But we actually know that it was lower there. And we don't actually know what it's going to do here. And we don't even know if this is going to carry on down or if this is going to go back up. And the problem with this as well is that this is the average of last month. So we don't actually know if it was the beginning or the end of last month, or right now. We don't know if we're here or here or here. I mean, I can tell you, I'm pretty sure that we're actually going to go down this month. I'm pretty sure that this number is going to go lower when it comes out. And it's produced around about the 1st or 2nd of October or September as an average in September. But we don't really know where it is. So, Mr. Buyer, I'm looking for some guidance here from you. Where is the bottom? Tell me what the bottom's going to look like. And they will give you all sorts of rationale and bits and pieces and reasons. And it's a good way of really making them think. Am I at the bottom? And the answer is we don't know. So the next question I then go to is, okay, so let's forget the price for a second. Just play with me for a bit. Let's just ignore the absolute price. Let me ask you this question. How long are you going to be in this house? It could be an investment property, or it could be a personal house. It could be upsizing it, downsizing. How long do you think you're going to be in this house for? And I go, well, at least a year or two. My next response is going to be, all right, if you're only thinking of a year or two, honestly, I'd say right where you are. Unless you absolutely have to move from where you are to this house today, I wouldn't buy a house if I was only looking at a year or two out. Honestly, you should rent something. Because I can't, I'm an honest guy. If you want to buy a house, I'll sell it to you. But if you're only going to be there for a year or two, in a year or two's time, this might be higher, lower, or the same price, and it's going to cost you 4 to 5% to get out at the other end. And you're not going to make 4 to 5% in the next year or two. Probably not. I don't know for sure, but probably not. So my advice is just go rent something. If they say, oh, I'm looking at least 5 to 10 years, because the average Canadian is about 7 or 8 years before they move, roughly. It can go on school cycles. Kids, when they leave elementary, move to high school, you'll find the parents move in the middle. So it could be 5 to 10 years. But if it's 5 to 10 years, it doesn't actually matter if we buy here or here or here. Really. I mean, of course it matters, but does it really matter? What's the reason you're moving? Are you going to be near the kids' school? Well, we need to upsize. We've got these extra 2 kids and we're in a 2-bedroom house and it's not working. So are you going to sacrifice 5 to 10 years of enjoyment but not making the decision today? That doesn't seem to make sense to me. So I'm making the assumption you can buy at 6% interest rates and everything else. But the reality is 5 to 10 years down the road, I can't guarantee you, but I could probably put money in it and say we're going to be higher than what we are today. Probably. The law of averages and history says that we will be. Even if this is going to be a protracted sideways movement, which it probably will be, the reality is we're probably going to be higher in 5 to 10 years, don't know the exact number. And even if we're exactly the same price, does it actually matter? Because for the same price in 5 to 10 years' time, I'm assuming you're moving into something else. You're going to sell and buy, everything's relative. You'll get the 2 sides of the transaction. You won't actually make it. So if it's your personal house, this doesn't actually matter if you're at the buy side, as long as you recognize that you would not buy at the bottom. And then if you do, it's going to be fluke. So that's the conversations I typically have around that one, just to kind of try and get them off the fence a bit. Or to get them to the point where they might be. Another strategy is, let's make the assumption that you're buying an average house, and this average price now, 680.
Yeah.
680, right? So the average price, you're buying an average house, Mr. Buyer, it's 680,000. What do we think the movement down from here is going to be? Because if you think it's at the bottom, you'd be buying anyway. So let's get that one out of the window. You think the prices are going to go down further? By how much? Give me a number. And they may or may not be able to give you an exact number. But one of the things you can do, if you're okay with a calculator on the spot, you can pull out a mortgage calculator and you can say, okay, what's going to make it go down? Interest rates go up. If they go up by what, 0.5%, you tell me that reduces the buying power by X amount per month. We can feed that into a mortgage calculator and I can tell you the number. Well, if it's not 680, let's say it's 10% less, 68,000.
Close to 600.
Close to 600. If we find an average price house today that's listed for 680, we could offer 600. I know that kind of sounds like really wacky, but supposing we offered 620 and we settle at 630, you just bought a house 7 or 8% below today's price. So if the market drops 10%, the most you lost was 2 to 3. And you're not losing, you just bought it. You only lose it when you sell it. And if you're going to buy something when you sell, you're not losing anything. That might help a buyer get to the point of decision making of action. You get to sign a buyer rep. You got an appointment. You sign a piece of paper. That moves things forward. Now you've got a buyer under contract, which is potential. So you could, all right, maybe we go back to this number. We could offer that number and see how we get on. And I know as realtors, we don't want to be chasing around town, making local offers everywhere because it gets us a bad rep as much as anything else. But there could be somebody out there, a seller, who actually wants to sell and needs to sell. So you have to go find them. Oh yeah, it sounds like work, it really is. It's a lot more work. But that's how you find potentially the bottom of the market, is you make the bottom.
We'll go up in that one guy who's waiting 10 years for the market to crash. I mean, there's always somebody waiting.
Yeah.
Well, going back to what Ian said, when he wrote those 45 notes, one of the people that contacted Ian is a guy, he's a sweet old guy, he really is. You've been talking to him for I don't know how many years.
He came for a presentation about 10 years ago.
But I think he called in and said, okay, is now a good time to buy? And you're thinking, oh my gosh, like 10 years ago when we first started looking, like really.
I wrote to George thinking, I wonder if he's still alive. I'm going to write, I've got the nerve to call him just in case, right? I don't want to talk to his wife. He said, he died last week. You know, he's like 83 years old. And he wants to buy something for his grandchildren. And I've been talking to him for 10 years.
But I mean, if you'd have bought 10 years ago, it was like, it's like seriously.
It's
I mean,
another
it's now.
potential to take with you as a 10-year
Yeah.
chart to carry some of the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely. It's pretty
Especially when you said in 5 years where we would be, well, history would say we're going to
Mhm.
retire.
Yeah.
Most definitely. It's brilliant. Probably that today. Check that today. 5 years on that.
Max.
Oh, nice.
This is homes for sale.
Oh, great.
Sales price and then average.
Yeah, where do you want it? Back then the buy was 10 years ago.
That was 2017. We
That
all,
was
we all remember 2017, right? I mean,
And look what happened.
COVID, yeah.
And we thought that was crazy when I bought my house in 2016, coming into 2017. My old house near Johnson's Beach, I bought it for 480,000 or something. And my husband was like, what would it take for you to list this house? And I'm just like, 600,000. And he was just like, well, that's never gonna happen. We sold last year for 900.
Yeah.
But both of those blips way over to the right. Right there, that one, and then it went up the next big one. Right there. One more. Right there. You really felt those. We knew the market was shot. That's what I'm saying. Twice I thought we were going to shift. But now I really think.
All
Yeah.
February, February 2020, February 21,
free market.
February 22. Where are you?
Yeah, that's why the spring market, you always tell people, it's not May
Yeah.
and June, it's
March.
February.
Yeah.
Forget your,
When was February 23?
Pardon me,
When was February 23?
the other peak. No, oh no, you're right, it was the dip.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, this mouse is not doing me any favors.
I think it was this
I'm trying, it's not letting me move the mouse. I'm like actually trying to get.
This one.
no, you were right,
No,
Paul,
you were right.
it's the last peak.
Right
Yeah,
there.
right, one more. Yeah.
Every February has been pretty much higher. So it peaked too much.
But it's pretty hard to capture that tall one, right? So until we get another 7 or 8 years.
But
of
how,
data,
like, is that even possible to go back here?
It's,
it will be one of these other peaks
yeah,
soon.
it will be.
That's terrifying.
Inflation dictates that.
Yeah, it does. I mean, inflation of 2 or 3% says that this is 2 or 3% a year.
That's terrifying.
And then you get these blow off moments for whatever reason, that they really are. You see this kind of, well, actually, let's take this whole thing. Right? So if you were trading financial stocks, there's a pattern called the head and shoulders, and you can look it up, it's quite famous. And it doesn't always work, but it has an uncanny thing of working. So a head and shoulders line is, this is the shoulder, this is kind of the second shoulder, and this is the head. Okay. If you draw a line across the shoulder, and ideally it's sloping upward, this one is actually sloping slightly downward, so it may not work. But if you want to take a bearish attitude, if you look at markets and head and shoulder patterns, this amplitude here, take it from the shoulder line, project it down, that's where we go. Which is a 45% drop from the top. Now, I'm not saying that that's going to happen here because this is a real estate and stocks have different things, but that is a very well-known chart pattern.
But we already had a 30% drop, so 45.
No, it's not big.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's another like big.
yeah, it's not stupid what
It's
you're
not,
saying.
it's not crazy, right? It's so, it's almost like it's going to fall off. You know, it's so overweighted on one side. So, something just to bear in mind. I don't think I'm going to say it's going to happen, but there is a phase 2 to what's coming, which is economically driven. Phase 1 is just interest rates. Phase 2 is things like unemployment, businesses closing, people losing their jobs, and people deciding that they can't afford the mortgage that they're in. So we get foreclosures and power sales and everything else. And it snowballs on the other side of this, which we haven't done in years and years and years.
Somebody locked in at 2% in the next 3 years is going to come into a 6 or 7% mortgage, according to that trust.
Yeah. I have a client right now that bought in February. He purchased a property that was double, I was telling, I think you were here the other day, that was double ended by the listing agent. Went in with a firm offer, couldn't get financing, so the listing agent privately lended him the money for it. And now 2 years later is asking for it back and said, oh, no problem, I'll just list your house for you, we'll get it up for sale.
It's definitely dangerous.
So he's not getting that listing. I am.
Well, it's fine. All right, I'll see you later. I'll go back to a second. That one. I think it's that one.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Sorry. So there's another one. That's the sense. This stuff will be probably covered anyway, but lots of marketing and open houses will sell my house. Got one of those at the moment. Why are you not doing enough to sell my house? I saw it on Facebook again the other day. He's left the same photo in it. Yeah, because I'm marketing it, and it took you like 3 months to fix the door in the kitchen. And it took me a week to get over there and reshoot that photo and get it back on the MLS. But you're complaining because it took you 3 months to fix it in the first place, whatever. I don't know how to fix everything. My client decided not to fix everything. He fixed all the floors in the house except the master bedroom. He did put a new bathroom in, which is good. And then last week, after being listed for 3 months, when the listing expired this Friday, he decided it was really time to change the window because the old one, believe it or not, was so bad. I pointed out to him that I thought it might actually fall out the side of the house because the frame was so rotten. A partial render. it was 2 months into the listing where I said to him, would you mind just tying the deck, the two pieces of the deck, the corner post that's broken, would you mind just tying the two pieces together? So if someone accidentally leans on the side, they aren't actually going to fall right through. If you just tie the ends together, or they might go backwards and step back before they fall through. So they partially renovated the house. Something like, fixing up a house. I mean, really, you've got to make it at least presentable. In a hot market, it doesn't matter so much. Market we have now, everything that doesn't show right is a discount.
And dancing elephants won't market up overpriced cars.
I hadn't thought about dancing elephants. Maybe I should try that one. So, yeah, I mean, that's the seller's market. I think we discussed that one a fair bit. Successful people shift always continues to the relevant situation, which will really already knows this. Energized sellers, pricing strategies. Okay, so one pricing strategy which I do, it comes back to the graph. Okay, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, according to history, the price should be here.
She's marketing it.
Sorry, Stephanie Davis is out there like dancing on her.
She's
On her.
There's a show happening in the
trying to
kitchen.
make people laugh.
So it's no good pricing where the market was. You have to look at the trend and then you have to make some kind of an assumption.
She just had her shirt over her head and she's walking.
With her sunglasses on.
So there's no point in pricing where the market was. You have to get predictive in a shifting market, particularly a downshifting market. If all the numbers come out to 680,000, which is the average it is today, where do you list it? No point listing it at 700 or 725.
Head of the market.
Ahead of the market. Got to price ahead of the market. How do you know where ahead of the market is? You don't really, but you have to go on the basis of this. That last move down we saw on the chart is suggesting that house prices are probably in a downward trend. What can we look at today that confirms that or suggests that for sure it really is? Things that we can look at is like on Matrix, how many homes sold this month versus last month. When we actually pull some live numbers of how many listings there are this month versus last month versus the month before. Oh, there's more listings. There don't appear to be so many sales. The ratio between the pendings and the actives is 30%. This is the kind of stuff that you can use to show that the market is trending down. So if the chart was suggesting, and if all the stuff that we're looking at, bearing in mind we're using a CMA or a comp or whatever it is you're doing, that's got up-to-date market listings in it, and we can see that this one sold 2 weeks ago, but this, yours is the same, or darn close to being the same. Where do we list it? Well, it's going down. So we can't list it at the same price. We have to take their sold data, assume to some degree that the market's dropping about 3 to 4% a month, which it probably is. And if you divide that by the number of weeks, we've just lost another 1.5%. 1.5% from 700,000 is 1070, 15 grand, something like that, roughly, 15 grand at least. We have to list 15 grand lower to even attempt to get the same number that you're listing. If we don't do that, what's going to happen is the market is going to just slide away from underneath it.
We'll chase it.
And you're going to chase it. And you'll get nothing.
And the other people, other agents that don't do this, are going to help you sell your house. Totally, they're going to be sitting there above your price.
Yeah, even with the days on market. Yeah, it's extending. You look at the days on market on your comps. But this one is for sale at like 700. Like, wow, we should be priced at 700. Yeah, but it's been on the market for 45 days and it hasn't sold yet. Well, 45 days ago, the market was here. That is 5 to 6% higher. So we know But if they were priced correctly, it would have sold, and it hasn't. So the last 30 days, they've lost 5%. So they have to drop their price by $35,000 just to catch up with where they should not have been, because that's sort of catching up with the current ask. They really have to go down by another 5% on top of that to catch up with where you're going to get ahead of it.
One of the coaches in there says something for presentations like that. You want me to level with you or lie to you? Like, you know, someone, you want me to be honest to you or you want me to lie to you? Because all these other agents are actually lying to you.
They are.
Now you're 50,
Yeah, that's just fine. Yeah, so these are all strategies you can use to get the seller to tell you what the pricing should be. I mean, it's like, you know, a man convinced against his will is still of the same opinion still. And so you can't necessarily give them the price, they have to give you the price. You're going to use these tools to help you suggest to them where they should be and ask them how they want to do this. And you know, you're there as a reality check. And it's the buffers, right? It tastes good, it tastes awful, but it works.
But at the end of the day, every agent should just analyze that. I don't make up the price of people's houses, and neither does the agent, like the market does. So the better you are at analyzing that, the better you will be at it.
And that's it. So I think create urgency was difficult to create urgency in a buyer right now, but you should at least create the thought process of I'm not going to find the bottom. Why am I having this conversation? There's a reason why I'm sitting here talking to him. It's not because I love him so much. It's that's all right. Let's get there. So with the sellers market, we spend a lot more time servicing leads, not so much time generating leads. We've done two. In the buyers market, we generate tons of leads because we need to sit through those that can actually buy, and not so much. So I disagree with it. I think it's just more leads. I don't think we spend less time servicing them. To be honest. So that is. Pricing to empower.
It's fun, like hearing you two both kind of like talk back and forth with like on things. It's been and getting almost like a one-on-one lesson from like speeches and things to say to your buyers and sellers. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Go on,
You're
sorry.
Yeah. So you've got the pricing in the rising market. You can screw it up, still went out like a hero. Chasing the market. Yeah, this is exactly what we should. There's a great graphic if you need one. This is just exactly what we've been talking about.
Another important thing on this is if you know their goal, this is easier to do than if you're just talking about price, because you want to get them to wherever they want to go sooner rather than later. That's a pain. I think you mentioned pain versus pleasure right on. I mean, you got to solve their problem.
Wouldn't it be nice if we take all our clients and put them in a room like this and have us collectively explain this?
Yeah.
And then say, okay, Mr. Sellers, we're going over all the rooms, let's decide what we're going to list your house for. You know, this is like a phenomenal overview of how not to screw up pricing.
And I think I also heard you say you buy and sell in the same market. So the sooner you sell, the sooner you can buy.
And especially if you're upside. Like, you know, if you're buying a bigger house, this is awesome. It's the best thing that's happened. You know, I mean, you're going to buy a bigger house, you might as well buy it when it's going down, the gap between the two closes.
And 10% of a bigger number is a much bigger number.
Yeah.
I just got one actually from.
Yeah. Well, what I find right now is the more expensive stuff is selling easier than the average price stuff.
Because I mean, I think those that have got lots of money,
They can qualify.
still,
Yeah.
they can actually qualify. And it's not you know, I've forgotten the exact phrase, but it's something like date the rate and marry the.
Date the rate and marry the house.
Thank you. That's it. There you go. You know, the rate of the amortization can be shifted and played with and moved around a bit. So, you know, I mean, you can always expend and then retract them again. So it works in most cases. Price in the market, there we go. Talk about that. Yeah, we'll know to do this tonight. Grief. Oh, God, yeah. So if anybody's lost somebody, like you go through this process, this is the grief. And this is the bit like the seller that thinks their house is worth $2 million and sort of thing. They have to go through this No, my house is still worth $2 million. Complete denial right up front. Then anger that they missed it. They're angry at themselves, but they blame you. Because you're the guy sitting on the side of the table. Bargaining, oh, my house still, couldn't we list it for 1.9? Couldn't we list it for 950,000? That was stage 3 of grief. Depression. Oh God, we're going to lose the house. It's all going to go wrong. They get depressed, and finally they get around to acceptance. Okay, I guess you're right. Yeah, well, we did really want to move on so that Johnny could go to that nice new school, or Harry could go to university. We want to be close to Harry, so acceptance. All right, it is what it is. We're going to buy as well as sell, and then you give them the silver lining. You know, if you're going to buy something, it doesn't matter. Just don't get off. That stage is good. Right there. Staging helps. We know about staging. I don't know if this is totally true. I mean, I know they've got these numbers, but plantings, paint, pictures, fixtures, versions, everything you do around helps. Everything. I think we're at the end. Oh, actually, I like that photo. I like Jim Rohn. I don't know if you guys follow Jim Rohn. I like it a lot. If somebody's going down the wrong road, he doesn't need motivation to speed up. He just needs an education to turn him around. You know, why go down the road if it's the wrong road? With the timing, yeah.
He also says, only floss the teeth you want to keep.
There's the one.
What?
Yeah,
And
that's a good one.
he's funny, Jim Brown. Only floss the teeth you want to keep.
Did you know, do you follow him, Tom?
No.
Oh, okay, he's there.
Yeah, I was going to say Xavier.
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I actually had breakfast with Jim Rohn in Maastricht.
Oh, really?
In 2001.
Yeah.
And I was with somebody who knew him personally, and we all happened to be staying in the same hotel. And I went down for breakfast with the guy that I knew. He said, "Oh, there's Jim. Well, let's go have a chat with Jim." And I said, "Oh, okay, let's sit down with Jim." It was only when I sat down there. Jim Rohn, the world famous philosopher Jim Rohn, and I'm having breakfast with him. He's like, "Hey, dear, they got to see this chat for a while." I went, "Oh God." Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Motivation is temporary, so is showering, but I do it every day.
He really comes up with his requests. Yeah, you can post to the Bible a lot. You know, if you follow God and that kind of thing, you'll find a lot of these quotes come from the Bible or inspired. There's a lot of good stuff in the Bible. Buyer urgency, able within your financing, of course, they can't buy it. You can buy it. You've got something back to back. If anything is possible in any direction, just strive for positive and get after what I want to happen, but worse, I'll relish things go wrong. Transactions, inspections required. So you can try and do some of this stuff at a time. You know, get the inspection done if you can. I mean, pre-inspections are a good thing. The seller's not sure, at least try and walk through the home, point things out. Try to mitigate anything you can before you even get to all this thing.
I had a seller back out of a firm agreement in July,
I step up back down.
and the seller come back there. Yeah, we're not, she gave us many reasons over the course of the whole thing, but 11 days after we had firmed up, she emailed me directly, and her son messaged me on my online portfolios and just said, "We're backing up, we don't want to close this." And my guys were like, had been looking for several months and loved the house and weren't willing to back down, and got themselves a litigation lawyer and went to sue for specific performance, and they ended up settling on $100,000. So the sellers had to take out another mortgage and pay them $100,000 out of their.
I'm surprised I couldn't sue them to close.
Well, they were trying to sue them to close, but what had happened was this lady had moved her son in, and her son had gutted the house. So in like everything was on the front lawn. like flooring, drywall, the whole thing.
That's a good question.
And so, yeah.
That's a really weird one, in a falling market. I mean,
Yeah, so she had pulled everything out. They wanted to close the house because it was on a big lot in Victoria Harbor and they got it for a decent number. And so they went to go and sue for specific performance, and then eventually she offered them 50. They asked for 150, they got to 100 and said like, we'll take it. We'll take it and go, because to them, they're like, we don't know what we're walking into now that he's been in that house for 3 months.
I mean, I'm surprised they even had balls to negotiate. I mean, good for them, but
Oh,
I would have quit.
They're gonna spend a tough Brits, I tell you.
Oh,
They were
really?
shooting the words coming out of her mouth. Like, yeah, she's tough as nails, my lady. She fought for it and they got it 100 grand plus their deposit back. And
It's really interesting because obviously if you got that the other way around, you can prove lots, you've got to prove lots, right? If the buyer doesn't close and then you can sell it, you've got a number which you can prove.
so last year, I thank goodness I've been on the good side of these situations and I've learned a lot from them. But last year I sold a house on Wessinger in February and it was supposed to close in March. Well, the market dropped off, so the buyers backed out. The lawyer actually can try to convince my sellers to take a $10,000 immediate payment to give them a mutual release. Anyways, we ended up putting it back on the market. It sold for $114,000 less than we sold it the first time. They ended up getting awarded, in total, it was $141,000 from the buyer, and then they went after them to claim it because they own businesses.
That's crazy.
So I've been on there's no good side, but I've been on the non-offending side of both of them now. So I did learn a lot following, like just hearing what my clients of the information.
Right. I mean, I won't give the details because it's an ongoing court case, but Caroline had a good testimony a couple of weeks ago. You know, these like, I'll buy your house for cash people.
Yeah.
So one of them had a firm purchase and didn't close. And the seller contacted Caroline. So the seller had bought a house in Nova Scotia, had quit their job so they could move, and then the I'll buy your house for cash guy didn't close, tried to go back to her and say, we'll give you a deposit back. You know, didn't be wrong, $1,000 deposit that they generously gave, to which point the seller said, I don't think so, contacted Caroline, we said, contact your lawyer. And we ended up selling the house for about $100,000 less than they would pass out fees and everything else. So Caroline had to stand up and justify why she was a good real estate agent. So the defense were trying to blame the real estate agent for not doing what they should have done to sell the house for the right price. We had multiple offers, like 3 offers. One of them was ours, thank God we didn't get it. But that was like after we stepped down in price, we had to prove we couldn't sell it at a certain price. Then we lowered the price, still couldn't sell. Then we had 30 showings, a whole bunch of inquiry. We kept the text messages, emails, you name it, the entire shooting match. And then it finally sold. I mean, they agreed to buy it initially for like $725, and they backed down to $685, and she agreed that they could buy it for $685, and they didn't. We ended up selling it for $615, I think it was. So now the seller is suing for, of course, the difference, plus our fees, plus the loss at the other end, because she bought a house at the other end, had to get emergency financing for the other house. The house was not in good shape, and she'd already moved her furniture out on the hopper for storage. So it became a complete mess. With many lots of these.
And that's like this seller situation, it just kept on getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Like first it was like the basement bar was out on the front lawn, and then all of a sudden they're ripping down the wood fencing around the property and cutting down trees. And my guys are going, we're supposed to move in here in a month. They gave notice, they sold their house. Like it was just like, yeah, it got intense, but now we're out looking again. So
Yeah.
it sucks because I had been working with them for so long and I negotiated this hell out of this deal and ended up getting it done. And they were the one asking us like a million questions, like during the negotiations for them then to like back out of it. So it sucks because I would have
I think that's pretty much the end of this.
Yes.
I've got to run anyway, so I've got to go and meet
Thank you,
Mike.
Ian.
Sorry?
Please thank Caroline for me. I will.
Thank you for showing up.
Thank
It's a
you.
little lonely speaking to an empty room otherwise, but you know what? It's the quality on the quantity.